Hi, Alex from Average Woodworking here. Today is part 2 of our ultimate outdoor doghouse build. In case you missed it, in the last video we built the flooring frame of our doghouse using some pressure treated 2x4s. We attached the flooring deck on top of that. We put in a spacer for the interior of the doghouse, and now we're all ready to attach the walls and keep going. You're up to date? Let's get on it. To attach the vertical rails to the frame, I'm going to cut a 2x4 sized hole in the top of the plywood sheathing and attach them directly to the frame underneath. To get that hole started, it's really easy to take your drill and drill out a hole about the same size as your jigsaw blade. That makes it super easy to get the jigsaw blade inside the wood and get a nice clean cut starting to the corners. Oftentimes the best way to check your work is simply to go back and use that same offcut I used earlier to check and see if it will fit. In this case, I had a couple of minor alterations, but they fit pretty easily. For the rails themselves, I just had to figure out exactly how tall I wanted the front of my doghouse to be and how tall I wanted the back. I was able to use that distance to figure out my angle later, but first I had to get them to the right length. The 4 corner rails are also getting a 2x4 size cutout so that a crosspiece can sit snugly right into the corner. Oh, my clamp broke. This turned out to be a little harder than I expected with a jigsaw, but after finding the right blade, it wasn't too bad. As it turns out, she was right. Having the whole piece on the ground made it pretty easy to get these pieces square. And just to be double sure I'm not going to split any of the wood, I went ahead and drilled pilot holes for these screws. Sometimes I found it easy to actually hold the piece of wood with the square while I was drilling the screw in. Made it kind of easy. As it turns out, my original dimensions for the dividing piece weren't quite right, so I had to cut a hole out of the corner. The jigsaw didn't work, the back saw didn't work, the reciprocating saw didn't work, but the handy tool did. My cross piece now fits snugly into the 2 corner pieces and fit into the dividing piece. See if I can figure out where I'm going. I ended up gluing all of these joints too, and a handy little tip I found is if you mark on the board where the connector is supposed to be with the pencil, it makes adding the glue later that much easier. With some clamps, I drove some screws in, and once the glue dries, these will be really secure. The center piece is actually sitting flush underneath this cross piece, so I chose to drill in with some pocket hole screws. If you remember, our plywood framing from before is not sitting flush with the outside of the frame. If I want my wall fence pickets to be sitting flush with the outside of the frame where I can attach it, I need extra boards to make this flush with the bottom. Again, I'm using glue here, and that will make everything just that much more secure. Otherwise, galvanized screws. To get the top piece, using 2 2x4 spacers made this really simple. All I had to do was put the spacers in where in the length that I wanted them, clamp them into place, and then with some screws put in the actual piece. Sometimes the spacers can be kind of hard to get out. Then it's just rinse and repeat for all the other sides. For the roofing struts, I had to get this angle right. And now I don't have an exact angle, but I did use my speed square to help me figure it out. Otherwise, it was trial and error with these 2x4s until I got it. Which I got it right about here. Then it was repeating this 5 more times. I didn't have room in my shop to hold all my fence pickets, so I had to get them from outside. Figuring out the length for this back wall was going to be a little bit of a trial and error. I knew about how far I needed it to be, so I started with what I thought was going to be a good piece and checked to see if it would work. And yes, I think it will work just fine. After that, setting up a stop block, it made it really easy. As a matter of fact, I started cutting 3 boards at a time. This is just dry fit, so they're not actually attached, but I'm doing this here in the shop to make sure this will work tomorrow when I go outside. A few less cuts there. I think that's going to look really nice. For the angled sides, I had to figure out what angle the top of the rails were going to be so that I could gradually get the pickets smaller as they go from the front to the back. I went ahead and cut the angle into the top of all of them and then went back and cut them down to size after that. I found out as long as the first one was cut right, I could take off about an inch off of each one after that, and it would come out to almost perfect. With these fitting pretty good, it's time to go outside and attach them. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch the part 1 of this series, you can click right there. To subscribe to my channel, you can click down here. And until next time, hope to see you again soon. See ya!